Hello and welcome. This is the Astrology of the Week Ahead podcast. I'm your host, your astro bestie, Chani Nicholas. And in this episode, we are talking about the week of November 18th. Y'all, we are at the end of an era that started in 2008. Pluto is going to finally, for the last time, for good in our lifetime, leave Capricorn. It won't be back in Capricorn for another 240 something years. Now, unless you're a weird billionaire that plans to live forever, you won't have Pluto back in Capricorn again in your lifetime. And neither will I, because I don't want to do that. So what does that mean? Well, when a planet is hanging out at the last degrees of a sign, it was viewed by some of the ancient astrologers, many, as not so great. And this is why. We hear a lot about planets at the end of a sign being about finishing something up, which, okay, totally. Yes, because we're at the end of a chapter. When a planet takes that long to move through a sign, like Pluto does, Pluto has been in Capricorn since 2008, so that's a hefty chunk of time. Not exactly 2 decades, but a decade and a half and some, then we know that we can look back at 2008 and be like, well, what was the mark of that year? And how did it relate to Pluto? And how did it relate to Capricorn? Well, the mark of 2008, as we all know, was a financial collapse in the world. I'm not predicting a financial collapse when Pluto leaves Capricorn, but I'm saying that's how the story of this planet through this sign started. So Capricorn is an earth sign, so it is about the material world. And Capricorn is a sign ruled by Saturn, so it's a lot about the structures that we exist within. And it is a very restrictive sign. It is a Saturnian sign, so it is by nature restrictive. And because it's an earth sign and it's Saturn ruled, it's restrictive on a material level. So when a planet is in Capricorn, especially a planet that takes so long to get to a sign like Pluto, we can bet that there's something going to be restrictive on a material level. Now, Pluto is about the sometimes destruction of things. It is about the underworld. It is about the transformation of things. It is about what is rotting and decrepit and needs to be composted and alchemized and transformed. So, in Capricorn, at least in 2008, when it entered the scene, it was very much about what was so decrepit and rotting in our material systems, our financial systems. Now that we're ending that chapter, what is happening now that is like a bookend to 2008? What is happening now that is wrapping something up since 2008? Now, we might notice that in our personal lives. We might be like, oh, the part of my chart that contains Capricorn has had this huge tectonic shift. So it's not like a one and done. It's like a long haul transformation that happens in the part of our chart that contains Capricorn. So in this week's readings, I go over that in depth because it's so important. Now, some of you might be too young to remember what was going on in 2008. But surely, presidentially, something was happening in 2008. And surely, I'm recording this in the past in September, so I don't know what's happening in November, but surely there's something happening here. And those two things might also be linked. Okay, that was a really long-winded rant that I just went on. My point is that ancient astrologers thought that there was something specific to every degree of every sign. So there's a lot of different ways to look at each sign of the zodiac in ancient astrology. And there's one thing that we call the bounds. And the bounds are different segments of each sign being ruled by different planets. Now stay with me. This is why I don't go with the theory of like, oh, I'm on the cusp of a sign, because, okay, fine. But each and every single degree of the zodiac has significance. So you're not just like maybe 29 degrees or maybe 0 degrees. You're one or the other I don't mean that you don't have other planets in the next sign that would influence the ways in which you act or behave or experience life. I just mean that there's something specific to every single degree of the zodiac when you get into traditional astrology and looking at it from a lot of different concepts and lenses and philosophical ways of looking at things like the sky. And so the last couple of degrees of the zodiac, if we look at something called the bounds, are ruled by the two hard planets, Mars or Saturn. So that's why in traditional astrology, or it's one of the reasons why the last degrees of a sign are a little like, ooh, gosh, that seems hard. And we can also think of the planets getting to the end of the signs as a time when they're just like tired. Thea Anderson gave me that kind of way of looking at things. Their planets are exhausted by the time they get to these last signs. There's not a lot of oomph left. And so, you might notice November feels tiring, like we're ending something, hopefully, but also like, oof, there's a heftiness to this. There's something here that feels like a little dangerous even. Mars in the what we call the Egyptian bounds rules the last couple degrees of Capricorn. So Pluto being in the bounds of Mars and Capricorn gives us this feeling of like, oof, that's like a tough place without a lot of soft landing or places that feel very helpful. It's just tough, but we got to do hard work sometimes. So here we are. So there's that. Then there's the beginning of Pluto's absolute transit through Aquarius in terms of the tropical zodiac. This is not sidereal. We are talking tropical zodiac. So this is the beginning of it, although Pluto has been in and out of Aquarius for a minute now, right? This isn't the first entrance into it, but we know that this is where it is going to be until 2040 something. So it's a long time. So now the part of your chart that contains Aquarius gets this big overhaul. And let me tell you this, anyone with a planet or a point, ascendant, descendant, midheaven, IC, or the nodes, I would say, or Chiron, at the end of Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn, or at the very beginning of Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius is getting a major Pluto transit. So if you want to back that up to like the beginning of the year, like 28, but definitely 29 degrees of Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, or 0 to 1 degree of Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius. Those placements in our chart are getting a big moment from Pluto. Now, again, Pluto moves so slowly. It rolls back and forth. It, moves just a little bit and then stations retrograde and then moves back a little bit and then stations retrograde and then moves back maybe a little bit more. And so it edges, a little forward at a time or forward a little at a time. So it's a slow process. We don't know all the things that are going to happen when Pluto rolls over a planet, but we do know that it's going to be a significant alchemical process that we are being asked to undertake. And this is one of the things about Pluto as an underworld deity in any myth that you the world over get to know. If it's about the main character going into the underworld, usually what has to happen is they have to give things up on their way down, because what functions for us, what works for us in the upper realms, it doesn't work for us in the lower realms. Meaning, as we descend into our own personal darkness, as we descend into our own unconscious, as we descend into our own underworld, the stuff that works in the conscious realm doesn't work in the unconscious realm. We have to have a different orientation to life when we go into an underworld journey. We have to look at it more metaphorically or more mythically. I think that's the most helpful thing that I've found. So when Pluto rolls over a planet, we're being asked to give something up. But what we're being asked to give up is what we thought gave us power. And in the underworld journey, we find, oh, those things actually weren't powerful at all. My power is from within. My power is my ability to make contact with that deep, deep, deep part of myself, and that I'm not being afraid to be too intimate, too connected to my life, my entire self, all of the parts of me, the good, the bad, the distorted, the weird, the cringy, the all of it. And the underworld journey helps us to strip what is extraneous away. The underworld journey helps us to really understand where our power is and where it is not. And it is never in the world. It is always in us. And that is one of the most potent and powerful gifts that Pluto can give us, because the world will tell us otherwise. And I'm not saying you don't have access to supremacy or the ability to do harm when you engage with the world's supremacist power structures. You do, but that's not real power. That's just abuse. So Pluto helps us to understand the differences and understand the kind of power that we actually want to connect to. So what does Pluto in Aquarius mean for us? Well, the robots are coming. You know what I mean? It is pretty on the nose right now, y'all. It is AI for sure, for sure. And if Pluto is about power and Aquarius, the sign it's going into now, is in some way, shape, or form about advancing things or experimenting with things or being able to think outside the box, and if that has something to do with tech and technology, then we should be very engaged with what that means for us. What does AI mean for us? What does it mean to live in this day and age where, we're partnering with technology in ways that are phenomenal if we use the tool correctly? And if we don't, if the powers that be want to, dominate and control us, then this is a pretty good sign and signal that there's a technological revolution that we are in the midst of. We know it very well. We started to see it in the headlines as soon as Pluto entered Aquarius for the very first time in March of 2023. Again, it went in and out. Now it's in as of Tuesday. So if we look back at headlines about AI in March of 2023, you'll see a lot of stuff starting to come to the surface. The last time Pluto was in Aquarius was also the French Revolution, American Revolution. And back in March of 2023, there was also a lot of headlines about France and the connection between that moment and the uprisings that were happening then and the French Revolution. So we're thinking about groups of people and how groups of people make connections or contact with collective power, because that is probably the most helpful take on Pluto in Aquarius, because Aquarius is also the collective. It is the us. And Pluto is about the transformation. So when we get together and we demand a transformation, something happens. A lot happens. That's the only way change is made in history, against ruling classes and ruling powers. So there's that kind of feeling to it as well. I'm not saying it's easy or simple or that revolutions don't go the wrong way as well, that we don't get more militaristic after some revolutions. That's obvious. Like, you study history and we see that. I'm just saying that there is an emphasis on collective power. So what are you doing to organize with folks to create actual, real, deep Pluto, deep transformative solidarity? What are you doing to create deep transformative solidarity in your life, in your communities, in your activism? This is the call to action, because we know we're up against things that are really beyond our comprehension even. So the main theme is, who's your collective, who's your group, and how does that help you to expand your awareness, not tunnel vision? Because that's another thing with Pluto, can get very extreme and very tunnel visioned. So we don't want to just wall ourselves off from the rest of the world. How do we facilitate a broadening of our collective awareness and collective movements instead of a siloing? How do we know how to work with our actual collective power instead of making us more kind of siphoned off? With Pluto in Aquarius and Jupiter in Gemini, it does feel like from November 19th into June of 2025, the tech of it all, the communication of it all goes wild because both planets are in air signs. Jupiter in Gemini and Pluto in Aquarius does feel like a flurry of information about how tech is being used and what to expect from it. Okay, so that's the biggest headline. If you have something at the very, very end of a cardinal sign or the very, very beginning of a fixed sign, this is a moment. If you have something at the very end of a cardinal sign, again, very end, like 29th degree of Aries, of Cancer, of Libra, or of Capricorn, this is the official parting from Pluto. So if you're like, Chani, I was born at the 29th degree of the sun in Aries, I am getting tired, then I can say, well, Pluto's leaving for good. It's going. It's slow going, but it's going. And if your sun is at the very first degree of Aquarius or Taurus or Scorpio or Leo, this is a big moment of personal potency for you. I went through a Pluto transit to my sun a long time ago, and it was really, 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 really helpful. It actually was a moment of incredible transformation for me, and for me to really understand and locate my power and start to engage with it in a way that I never had before. And I had to give up a lot, but I was ready. So I also want you to know, like, you might be so ready for this if you're in a major Pluto transit. And if you want to check if you are, check the Chani app and go to the transit section of the app and see what Pluto is up to. Go down to long-term transits, scroll all the way down, and you'll see what Pluto transits you are in. But just know that it was one of the best transits I think I've ever had. I've had other Pluto transits that are pretty major that were really challenging and that I still think about quite a lot. And the things that I lost and the relationships that I lost marked me in a very deep way. But it's also something that I've come to understand as like, well, that was necessary because I would have stayed in the situation, not if Pluto hadn't come, but if the series of events hadn't happened, I would have just stayed in the bad relationship or in the bad situation. But because of the series of events that happened at the same time as Pluto making this major transit to my chart, it propelled me to move forward, to let go of things, to let things depart, and to have to make peace with it. And it doesn't mean that it's easy, but it means that I get why it was necessary. I get why it was ill-fitting, and we had to do different things. So just to bear all that in mind, the astrology is never against us. It's always for us. I really, truly believe that. Okay. Beginning of the week, the sun makes a trine to Neptune. Lovely, dreamy. I've got no problem with it. It's a lovely way to open the week. Mercury in Sag, in its pre-retrograde shadow very much now, it's slowing way down, is making an opposition to Jupiter in Gemini. Now, they're in each other's signs, so they're going to hype each other up. They're kind of like two inebriated people helping each other home. You know what I mean? They're going to have fun. I don't know if I'd ask them for directions, though. So we're still in that pocket of time where it's like, okay, good news. Can I trust it? Is that person in the same reality? Like, is this actually something I can hang my hat on? Or should I be like, okay, let's see if that actually comes through? Big ideas, fun conversations, big tales. Love it. But can I bank on it? I don't know. We'll have to see. Mercury is about to station retrograde on the 25th of November. Tuesday, Pluto changes signs. That's it. Now we're in super tech land, and we are going to have to make friends with the robots. I don't know. We got to figure it out piece by piece, moment by moment. We still have time, I think. Thursday, the sun moves into Sagittarius. Welcome Sagittarius season. The sun immediately makes a sextile with Pluto. I love this. This is like deep, cathartic adventures and some very transformative, wild times. I like it. I like this beginning. We've not had this. This is a new kind of thing. So it feels like a new beginning to Sagittarius season. And then on Friday, Venus makes a sextile to Saturn, which is really, really lovely. Venus is right now in Capricorn, which is Saturn's sign. And Saturn is in Pisces, which is the sign of Venus's exaltation. So this is excellent astrology for creative work, for relationships, and for building connection in a very structurally sound kind of way. I think it's like one of the nicer things that happens. I really like it. Y'all, thank you so much for writing reviews for us in the App Store. I mean, taking the time to do that is such a gift to us. We really appreciate it. I can't thank you enough. I wanted to leave you with this one. It's called Worth It. I've been listening for over a year and paying for premium. Chani is my favorite way to start my week. Her insights have helped me understand astrology at a much deeper level. I love everything about this app, and I highly recommend it to you. Her rising sign first approach really resonates with me. I'm an Aries rising, Pisces sun, and many of the Pisces readings haven't resonated with me as well. I love how this is like a weekly tutorial to the stars and how they work in general, and also how they are specifically working with me this week. Okay, so that is the reading for the week. Just want to add a couple other things. Remember when I was talking about the fact that every single degree of the zodiac is ruled by a planet in different systems? You can look at it in different ways. I just want to say that the very beginning of Aquarius is ruled by Mercury, the planet of communication and translation. And so it does feel like extra tech enthusiast, this beginning of Pluto in Aquarius. The other thing I want to say is that Pluto now is in a sign-based opposition with Mars, which these two are just in this really tense aspect. They made an opposition on November 3rd in their different signs, and now they've moved signs, and now they're back in that tension, and that it will be exact in the very beginning of January. So we're just kind of like locked into something, and we need a long-term determination because Mars is stationing retrograde. So take note of where Leo is in your chart. Take note if you have anything, again, at the beginning degrees of fixed signs, because Mars is sitting at 6 degrees. Well, it will station retrograde at 6 degrees of Leo. This week it's not there yet, but it's getting close. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 degrees of anything in your chart that is in Taurus or Leo or Scorpio or Aquarius is going to get a hard, quote unquote, aspect from this Mars retrograde over the course of this part of November and December. So I just want you to know that those planets will also get pulled in to this Mars retrograde. And it's good to know if you have anything there, like your ascendant or your moon or anything, of note in your chart. Not really like your Pluto or your Uranus or your Neptune. I don't know. I don't know if you'd feel that. Maybe you will, but I wouldn't really include those as much as Sun, Moon, Rising, Mercury, Venus, up to Saturn. Okay. Next week, come back because Mercury is stationing retrograde on the 25th, on Monday, in Sagittarius in a square to Saturn, also in opposition to Jupiter. So maybe that's really helpful. Maybe the opposition to Jupiter is like the two inebriated ones hobbling around, helping each other, maybe not really getting very far, but having a funny time. There's some jokes involved. Maybe it'll be funny. We could hope for that. There's also a new moon in Sag, so come back and we'll talk about that. I'm sending you lots of love, many, many blessings. Oh, wait, I forgot to say, we have our holiday store open for you. And there's so many cute things on the site right now. We have our Astro Planner, which sells out every single year. We have the very brand new get it while you can. Yearbook. It is a once a lifetime possibly moment. We've never done a physical yearbook. We have one this year. There's planetary candles. There's holiday candles. There's the very affirming deck of plenty. There are bath salts. There are such thoughtfully curated gift boxes. Everything is packaged by survivors making a living wage of $38.74, I believe, an hour in Los Angeles. So as you buy these things, you are supporting an entire ecosystem that is way beyond just the company. Also, the planetary candles and the bath salts and the gift boxes, all the proceeds for those physical products go directly to survivors that are the entrepreneurs behind those products. So it's a gift that gives in many, many, many ways. Check out our store on chani.com. I will see you back here next time. Bye for now.